A new threat to the U.S. economy has showed up as Saudi Arabia's relationship with China strengthens and they plan to shut down all oil sanctions to the U.S. Will this lead to the U.S. economy collapsing? The Saudi Arabian cabinet recently approved the decision to join the China-led Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO. This move could signal that Riyadh, with its abundant energy reserves, is taking sides in the Ukraine conflict. Well, if you like it or not, this decision might affect the Biden administration. The decision may have been influenced by U.S. President Joe Biden's refusal to engage with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, causing Saudi Arabia to move closer to Russia and China. The SCO, initially known as the Shanghai Five when it was formed in 1996, included the People's Republic of China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, and Tajikistan. It has since seen the inclusion of most other Central Asian states, with Mongolia as an observer. Notably, in 2017, Pakistan joined, followed by India in 2023. With member states, observers, and partners, the SCO now represents nearly 50% of the global population and approximately 30% of the global economy in nominal terms. Regarding purchasing power parity, PPP, a measure of economic power adjusted for the cost of goods, it surpasses the G7, which consists of a smaller population and represents only about 27% of the global economy. But you must be wondering how Saudi Arabia and China shutting down its oil supply to the US will collapse the US economy. Well, it's a big game plan. The SCO already wields significant economic influence, and in 2021, it conducted joint military exercises. Being rich in resources, Saudi Arabia is now set to join the SCO. The organization frequently engages in joint military and counterterrorism exercises, with future exercises planned for 2023. It will be intriguing to observe how Saudi Arabia's military engagement unfolds. The country's growing proximity to Beijing carries weight, particularly considering China's recent success in facilitating a rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, further enhancing China's diplomatic credibility. The ongoing disputes between Iran and Arab nations have contributed to the instability and fragmentation of the Middle East, preventing a unified regional approach to addressing their problems. Against this backdrop, Saudi Arabia's state-owned oil company, Aramco, is placing a significant bet on the continuous growth of Chinese oil demand. Saudi Arabia aims to strengthen its presence in the downstream market and increase its market share in China, the world's leading oil importer. Recently, Aramco announced two major deals in China's refinery and petrochemical sectors. These agreements provide the Saudi oil giant with a stake in China's downstream market and offer an additional outlet to export 690,000 barrels per day of Saudi crude to China. With these deals, Saudi Arabia can exploit the expected growth in Chinese oil demand. Simultaneously, the kingdom aims to boost its market share in China, where its OPEC Plus partner, Russia, has gained ground by offering cheap crude following the Russian invasion of Ukraine and subsequent sanctions imposed on Moscow. Saudi Arabia and Russia have long competed for a share of the Chinese oil market. However, this competition has intensified since the start of the Ukrainian conflict, with Russia shifting its focus to Asia and placing strategic bets on China and India as key buyers of its crude, often offering it at significant discounts compared to international benchmarks. Following the imposition of Western sanctions, Russia has been offering its oil at discounted prices, which could attract more Chinese buyers who are not bound by the price caps imposed by the G7 countries. Russia surpassed Saudi Arabia as China's largest crude oil supplier in January and February. China's increased purchase of discounted Russian crude oil has led to a 23.8% year-over-year jump in Chinese imports from Russia, reaching 1.94 million barrels per day (BPD), according to data from China's General Admission of Customs cited by Reuters. While Russia focuses on selling its Western-sanctioned crude oil at discounted rates in Asia, Saudi Arabia is securing long-term demand in China through its participation in refinery and petrochemical projects. Saudi Aramco has made a significant investment of $6 billion to acquire a 10% stake in Zhejiang Petroleum and Chemical Company (ZPC). an affiliate of Rongsheng Petrochemical. Under a long-term sales agreement, Aramco can supply 480,000 barrels per day of Arabian crude oil to ZPC. Additionally, it provides Aramco with a reliable and long-term export outlet for 690,000 BPD of Saudi crude to China. By securing these contracts, Saudi Arabia aims to increase its market share in China and establish a strong presence for years and decades. The acquisition of ZPC reinforces Aramco's position as a dependable supplier of essential crude oil to one of China's prominent refineries. Amidst various geopolitical conflicts, such as the war in Yemen, the rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran for regional dominance has been evident. As Saudi Arabia's oil production costs are lower than Iran's, part of its strategy has been to maintain artificially low oil prices, preferably below the $65 per barrel threshold believed necessary for Iran to balance its budget. It is unsurprising that soon after China brokered a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia, OPEC announced production cuts, of which both countries are members. These cuts are expected to increase oil prices, providing economic relief to the West and supporting the Russian economy. While many in the Western world oppose Putin's actions in Russia and desire for sanctions to be effective, the intricacies of global oil dynamics and geopolitical strategies often shape the outcomes. Interestingly, a recent analysis by the Economist Intelligence Unit reveals a growing support for Russia in the developed world, partly influenced by historical memories of European colonialism. It raises whether a new Russia-China-India bloc is emerging in the East. Last week, an important meeting occurred in New Delhi, largely unnoticed by Western media. During the SCO meeting, the Secretary of Russia's powerful Security Council held a private discussion with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Russia has heavily relied on trade relations with India and China to sustain its war efforts. The sanctions imposed on Russia by the West prompted President Vladimir Putin to establish an alternative economy to bypass dollar transactions and maintain these crucial trade ties. As a result, Russia's trade with China multiplied by an astounding 80 times, as revealed during Putin's recent meeting with President Xi, where they discussed a longer-term plan to utilize the yen as their preferred currency for settlements between Russia and countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Incorporating India into this plan becomes essential, giving Russia a significant increase in oil purchases since the invasion. India's imports from Russia have surged by a remarkable 400% in the past fiscal year alone. As a result, Russia has become India's fourth largest trade partner, continuing to strengthen and expand. These developments highlight the evolving dynamics and deepening ties between Russia, China, and India, potentially paving the way for a new strategic alignment in the East. It's no surprise that Petroshev was accompanied by the chairman of Rosneft, Russia's state-owned oil company, during his trip to India in October. They signed an agreement with the Indian Oil Corporation to increase oil supplies. The partnership between China and Saudi Arabia in the oil industry is a significant development with far-reaching implications for the Middle East and the global energy market. The strengthening economic and geopolitical ties between these two countries could shift the region's balance of power and weaken the U.S.'s position in the Middle East. Under the leadership of MBS, Saudi Arabia is positioning itself as a pivotal state between the U.S. and China. It aims to benefit from both worlds, similar to Germany's approach. While the U.S. guarantees Germany's security and urges it to purchase American-made weapons, Germany's export economy sees its future in China rather than the U.S. Only 10% of Germany's exports are sold in America, compared to the rising 6.9% in China, thus calling the U.S. the biggest export market for Saudi oil in 2022 is accurate but somewhat misleading. The picture changes when considering the combined value of Saudi Arabia's next biggest export markets in Asia. Japan accounts for 13%, China 12%, South Korea 10%, and India 8%, totaling 43% of Saudi exports, triple the value of exports to America. The demand from Asia will only continue to grow, solidifying Saudi Arabia's economic pivot towards the region. The recent meeting between Nikolai Petroshev, Secretary of Russia's Security Council, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi had significant implications. While details about their discussion remain scarce, The fact that Petrushev secured a meeting with Modi is noteworthy. Since the start of the Ukraine war, Russia's economy has heavily relied on trade ties with India and China to sustain its war efforts. The extensive sanctions imposed by the West forced President Putin to establish a parallel economy, avoiding dollar transactions and ensuring the continuity of these crucial trade relationships. Consequently, Russia's trade with China in yen multiplied by 80 times. During a recent meeting with China's President Xi, Putin also expressed a longer-term plan to rely on the yen as the preferred currency for settlements between Russia and countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Subscribe to the channel for more blues from the world of economics and global politics. The deepening partnership between China, Saudi Arabia, and Russia and the growing economic ties among these nations signifies a significant shift in the global energy landscape. The implications extend beyond energy markets, potentially impacting geopolitics and the balance of power. China's increasing demand for oil and its strategic collaborations with key oil-producing countries, such as Saudi Arabia, highlights the evolving dynamics in the global energy sector. As these trends unfold, these developments will undoubtedly shape the energy market's future and geopolitical relationships. Do you know that there is another development rendering U.S. sanctions useless? It's Iran's partnership with Russia for building a new railway route. Want to find out more? Click on the video link popping on your screen.